Hi, I'm Andrew Wallace, and welcome to the We've Got a Problem podcast, where each week we explore inspiring stories of struggle, success, and solutions to prevalent problems and how our guests have turned a problem into an opportunity. This week I'm joined by Kyle Pucko. He's Chief Marketing Officer and founder of Pintler Group, a Montana-based digital marketing agency, as well as founder of GeoFly, which specializes in geo-targeting IP locations for better marketing engagement. Having bootstrapped two firms and rapidly grown software as a service, I'm excited to get a chance to chat about what we can all learn from his experience and just have some fun. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited to jump in. It's a really cool concept for a podcast, and too many success stories out there. You need some of the failure. Mix things up.
Well, that's just it, right? So, I mean, you've founded a couple of companies, probably more that we haven't heard of. And everybody likes to talk about their success, and nobody knows all the stuff that happened behind the scenes that delivered or evolved into what we now see as success. And I think that's probably even most rampant on Instagram and places like that, where we see the finished version that somebody wants to present to us, but there were bats flying around behind the scenes, and we just barely got the paint up on the wall to cover over the scratches. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me how your process went.
Yeah, let's talk. I think a good place to start would be on the GeoFly side. And looking through some of your episodes, it seems like you talk with a lot of people, whether it's law firms, whether it's entrepreneurs. Would you say mostly entrepreneurs you're talking with, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people who've got their own thing going. So whether it's strictly entrepreneurs, I mean, look, like Dan Pink says in To Sell is Human, these days almost everybody's involved in some kind of selling, whether it's actual sales selling or non-sales selling. We're still trying to sell ourselves even within a company. But law firms, even independent musicians, independent artists, people who are trying to run a business either by themselves or with a few people, that's my bread and butter, and probably a big portion of my audience.
Yeah. And so for anybody listening, I'm sure they can probably attest to one of the hardest parts is getting started.
Yeah.
When we got started with GeoFly, it was myself and my co-founder, Nick, who, he an amazing, gifted developer. So the idea for GeoFly was we could change website content based on visitor location. So somebody visiting your website from New York would see different content than somebody visiting from California. It's a very simple concept. And we were both working at the University of Montana. That's where we're based here in Missoula. And we were both working full time. And we actually had approached the problem from the stance of, well, we want to find a software out there that does this, and we're just going to pay that company a bunch of money and help us do it. Well, of course, being entrepreneurs and falling for that trap, we said, oh, well, we can't find a product that does this, what we need it to do. So let's go ahead and build it ourselves.
Yep.
And so that's where we started. And, we were taking plays out of a lot of different playbooks that I'm sure your listeners and yourself are familiar with, sort of minimum viable product, lean startup side of things. We did some things right, which I'll say are things like, we didn't hire a design firm to design a logo for us for $100,000, right? We did it on some logo maker. But fast forward, one of the things that sticks out to me is really early. One of our first failures was our very first customer. It was Wilkes University in Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre University. We had been working with them. We thought, okay, I think they're going to be our first customer. Nick and I would meet and we'd get excited about it. And then the day came where, sure enough, they were going to be the customer. They went to put their credit card in, and of course they could not pay for our service because there was some sort of bug on the payment between Stripe. So it's very small things like this where fortunately we were taking that, do things that don't scale, the Paul Graham Y Combinator approach. So we had a really great relationship with the team at Wilkes, and they knew we were kind of in a startup mode. We were faking it in some ways until we made it, but in other ways we were telling them, your customer won, be prepared for some bugs. So that was to be expected. And then that was in 2016. And so, just kind of starting there with one of those really early sort of exciting entrepreneurship moments where you've worked on this thing for a long time, and then, oh, that's right,
Yeah.
we have to figure out how people pay.
Yeah. I mean, that's and actually, I think that's a big problem. Less for the electronic component of actually they can't figure out how to pay us, and more even for people figuring out how to switch the conversation to I need to get paid. Right.
Sure.
It's like, we want to do this for you. We want to rock and roll with our marketing, and we're going to help you out with all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And changing that conversation over to, and this is how much it costs, and this is how much we're going to need to get paid, is a difficult conversation for people to have when I think societally we have a little bit of a hold up for valuing our own services, especially when you're young and new as a company, being confident that what we're offering is worth what we're asking for it, and what we kind of need to get paid for it is tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And I think especially in some of the creative services, GeoFly is a software as a service. We were starting in 2015 when I think folks were getting used to the idea of a monthly recurring payment that they subscribe to this software, versus the enterprise model, which pay Microsoft $1,000 and it's yours, right. And you can maybe try to burn copies for your friends in college if you can figure it out.
That would be illegal.
Right. I think that is. but the SaaS model people were getting used to today, to your point, Andrew, I do think there's an education in coaching people how to pay you money. If I were to go into a store or an e-commerce shop, I know, okay, I want a sweatshirt. I've got to pay $40 for it. I give the cashier money and they give me a sweatshirt. Well, if I need marketing services, or if I need, a new look and feel for my brand, people don't know how to buy that thing or that service. And so what I've found on the marketing side is helping people understand like how you make that decision, being really clear.
Yes.
Here's what it looks like. Here's what the deliverables are. Here's our goals. And here's, just to really, so I'm not coming up short on your expectations. Here's what that looks like after month 1 and month 3.
Yes. And that's, any business has to deal with level setting expectations, right? I've got to manage expectations. And I talked with somebody probably, a couple months ago about the fact that it was one of my earliest interviews, who said the first time she ever encountered the phrase, we have to manage expectations, was when she was promoting a Broadway show. They were about to go out to the backers and start to get investors. Think, well, we need to manage expectations. You go, you do. Especially when you're dealing with other people, it's like, here's what we're going to level set at. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's how it's going to be. Here's how this is going to go. But you also don't want to say, don't think too highly of us. Don't expect
right.
the world of us. We're going to try and under promise and over deliver, right? But still, dealing with some of those kind of conversations is difficult, and coaching people to, I think, communicate more effectively can also be key in some of that stuff. So with GeoFly, right? So you got into it and kind of grew up, helped people geo-target IP locations, things like that.
Them, personalize their websites. Yep, you can surface, testimonials based on location. So if you're coming to the site from Oklahoma, you'll see somebody that uses your product from Oklahoma. Or if you're going from Japan, you'll see maybe the call to action button is in Japanese as a subtle, hey, we're supportive of, we can ship to Japan or whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So how did that go? How did the founding process go, growing that from, company one, from customer one? Yeah,
absolutely. We bootstrapped the company. For listeners that don't know what that means we didn't take on any sort of funding. We didn't go to a bank. We didn't go to Shark Tank and try to raise money. So it was completely owned by myself and my founder, co-founder Nick. We grew it sort of the old fashioned way. The growth was paid for by happy customers. So one of our very first customers, which we told you about, was Wilkes in Pennsylvania. And then I think customer number 2 or 3 was the University of Oregon. And that came about because I was going to the Oregon coast with my now wife. We were taking a vacation there, and I decided, I'm going to email some folks at the University of Oregon and see, maybe I can just schedule a meeting. This was probably 6 months into it, and we had a prototype, and it worked, and it was cool. And sure enough, I emailed their VP of admissions, and they said, I never respond to emails like this, but this is kind of cool. And it was after a couple emails like that and a couple experiences like that where people, who usually might ignore a cold email, were responding. And we said, I think we're onto something here. And we, of course, believed in the product, but it was nice to have some validation early. Then we continued to grow. And alongside that, so one of the other ways we sort of quote unquote funded GeoFly and funded me being able to leave full-time to go full-time GeoFly was to also practice digital marketing. So I was running digital marketing campaigns for some other Montana businesses, some national companies. I had learned a ton at the University of Montana. It was a great experience. They paid for my MBA there. They paid for me to go on a bunch of different like conferences to learn digital marketing. So I took those skills and took it to the marketplace. And during that time, it was sort of like GeoFly revenue was growing. I know for people listening, they can't see, but growing, steadily month over month. But Pintler Group, the agency side of business, which was helping to pay for my gas and groceries, was growing exponentially. So we had more people looking for digital marketing services than people looking for this SaaS product that we were trying to build. And so through the years, that has held true. Now I'd say about 20% of our revenue, maybe 10% of our revenue comes from GeoFly, and the rest is from our marketing agency side. And upon reflection, what I've found is GeoFly is still a highly viable product. We actually this year, 2022, have had more new customers than any other year previously. Even though we're not spending a ton of time and energy promoting it, we've got a great blog, we've got some ads running, and so it's been really exciting to see. And one of the reasons that we are doing things like this is because when people hear about GeoFly, they say, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool." But also learning from my mistakes of, boy, should have continued to push the gas down in 2016. It's not too late now, but looking back in the theme of this podcast, that's one of the things that maybe I would have done differently and learned from is with a SaaS product, the opportunity to grow it faster and reach a much wider audience than businesses in Montana or businesses in the Pacific Northwest is very real with GeoFly.
Yeah, I mean that's always part of the question is, what advice would you give if you were starting the company today? I mean, if there were a way to go into that market and it hadn't already been done by you years ago, right? But if that opportunity existed today, what would you do differently, knowing what you know?
Reflecting on that question, that's a great question. The bootstrapping model, I would definitely recommend getting your customers to help pay for and fund the growth of your business. Makes you be resourceful, makes you be scrappy in ways that if we had gotten $1 million check, we never would have realized or discovered.
Yeah, I mean, that's in total contrast to the blitz scaling model that so many startups try and take, right? Just dominate, throw money at it until you dominate the marketplace, and then hopefully maybe, I mean, that's the Uber and Blue Apron and pick any unprofitable company. We're just trying to get market share so that maybe someday we can convert to a business model that works. Whereas you kind of are forced when you're bootstrapping to make it pay for itself. Like the idea's got to be solid. The execution has to be not flawless, but it has to appear flawless to your clients. I mean, you really have to put in, like you say, be scrappy to get it. To get it going, and I too few people. I think that model sometimes gets disregarded as an option because they look at everybody else. I mean, hey, we do this with the rest of our lives too, but you look at everybody else and you go, well, nobody else is doing that. And you go, everybody else is doing something different. Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we can make this work. Okay. So
absolutely. And I also think, to sort of continue to answer that question, focus would have, I think, more laser focused attention on GeoFly might have been a good route to take. There's a gentleman, Brandon Turner, he sort of he did a podcast for Bigger Pockets. He did this analogy where he said, if you're building a bridge to an island and the island is your goal, your goal is GeoFly is going to grow to, 100K a month in revenue, or, you want to build a profitable business that can sustain a lifestyle that you're proud of. Then you're building this bridge. Too many times entrepreneurs will, see another island and start building a bridge to that island too. So you end up with 3 bridges that are unfinished. And in our case, I think Pintler Group was an island that had a different, or Pintler Group was a bridge toward a different island. And we tried to build both of them simultaneously. Now it's worked out. It's worked out well because oftentimes we'll have crossover. So a Pintler Group client on the marketing side has uses for GeoFly.
Sure.
But in 2017, when revenue was really ramping up for GeoFly, probably should have made the decision to maybe go all in, put all the chips in one basket in GeoFly, because the marketing services are always going to be there. There's so many marketers out there that can build a Facebook ad, and companies that need marketers to do just that.
Yep.
But maybe the window on something like a GeoFly is it's not closed, but I think building
but
one
it's the
bridge
kind of thing,
you
gotta leap when the opportunity presents itself, and go all in, like you say. I think this is a challenge that I think is more universal than just entrepreneurs, because we deal with that in the entertainment business where I make my normal living, with writing stories. I mean, even a writer who's sitting out there, you have a new story, you have a new idea, and it's exciting when you've got it. And because you're an idea person, you're always coming up with ideas, and you kind of work through one and you hit a roadblock, and instead of finishing and persevering and going all in on one or two of them, you start the next one, you start the next one, you start the next one. And so many writers, especially young ones who are not yet established in their careers in Hollywood, never finish anything because, and hey, it's like somebody said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You also can't possibly sell anything that you never finish. I mean, it's never going to be done.
Yeah. And people do it, right? You see people who have a lot of plates spinning. And they might be an anomaly. You look at an Elon Musk who has Tesla and SpaceX and the Hyperloop, and
how
does this person accomplish this? Yes. And while we can't all be Elon, it maybe there is something to be learned about, or something to learn from the focus in one thing. I think, have you ever heard about that famous dinner between Warren Buffett and Bill Gates? It was the first time they met. It was, Bill Gates was like, I don't know if I'm going to go out there. And they were both kind of hesitant to go. And it was this family friend. And anyway, they went there, and it was out on some island outside of Seattle. And they were sitting sort of on opposite ends of the table. And somebody had asked, these are the types of dinners that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates go to. So this is their conversation. Someone was asking, what do you attribute, your success to? What's the one thing? And both of them said focus. And then that answer to that question was what sort of brought them together. Like, oh, you said focus and I said focus, so maybe we're on the same wavelength here. Yeah. And I remember I take that with me. I heard that on the Acquired podcast, and I thought, that's kind of cool. I could use some of that in my life.
Couldn't we all? I mean, that's hey, and there is also a sense. I mean, YouTubers talk about this, especially when they're trying to start a YouTube channel, all those things. You don't actually know what your niche is when you're starting out. You don't know what's really going to hit your audience and go viral, as the case may be. So when you're starting out, you can be trying a lot of different things, but that doesn't mean you're not focused. You're focused on going kind of in a direction, but you need to refine as you go to start to narrow the focus.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because a lot of the lessons learned in trying a lot of different things make the next thing that much better.
Yeah.
And you need to learn, well, okay, I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. I need to hire somebody to help me with this. I need to outsource this, or I need to be the one that does this for the next company.
Yes.
And that's absolutely, that's a really, really great point about iterating on ideas, because before GeoFly I had 3 or 4 ideas that never made it to a line of code that, oh, well, this is a cool idea and someone should do it. And then you can lament about, oh, that would have been a good idea. But unless you actually build it, which, GeoFly taught me, geez, I can get strangers to, to come to my website and pay real money to solve a problem. And that's a powerful thing. It's really powerful.
I think one of the most important things to remember in something you just said is to solve a problem, because that's ultimately what we're all trying to do, is like, what problem does my product solve? What problem does my podcast help solve? And of course, and my little jokey thing, how can I turn a problem into an opportunity? But the fact is, we're all trying to get somebody to let us help them out, right? Let me help you. Let me do what I know how to do, how I can rock and roll this thing, and how can we be awesome together?
Yeah, absolutely. If I was on the opposite end of the buyer's table, would I buy would GeoFly be something that I would pay money for?
Yeah.
Is this, if I'm a listener scrolling through my podcast feed, is Andrew's podcast one I would listen to?
Yeah.
And so those are great. Those are great questions to ask, and a good way to keep the bar high for yourself. For Pintler Group, is Pintler Group a firm that I would hire to run my marketing? Absolutely. Right. Yes, for me, but I want to make sure that, our customers are like, yep, word of mouth is one of our biggest, form of new business, which is funny to say because we're in the digital marketing space. Like, we should just be running a lot of digital marketing to the right people, which we also do. But that's one of the things that we think a lot about.
So, I mean, one of the things that I kind of talk to everybody about is, what's the kind of biggest fallacy in your business? I mean, in digital marketing, things like that everybody buys into, that's actually kind of utter BS. I mean, is there anything that seems like everybody's chasing and it's just not important as far as you see it?
When we started GeoFly, our goal was to produce something that was, and these are words we use a lot internally, something that is like elegant, something that is seamless. And this was in 2015. And the reason we used those words was because we felt that the internet was getting noisy, was getting crowded, it was becoming like interruptive, disruptive. This was the era of pop-up email newsletters. This was and it's evolved into, okay, you have exit intent, you're going to exit out of the screen, we're going to prevent you from doing that. All of these things, if you're a business and you're using these tactics, you might see a conversion rate of 1%. So it's hard to say, well, if we turned off Bounce Exchange, which collects emails, we lose 1% of those emails. In our view, and something we've been talking about a lot on the team here at Pintler Group and GeoFly, is like, what is the long-term implication of the decisions that you make on your website? So when you personalize something with GeoFly, our goal is that the end user doesn't really know that the site is changing for them. It just feels more relevant. Oh, look, I'm from Texas and I'm going to the University of Arkansas's homepage, and there's a student that also grew up in Texas that goes to the University of Arkansas. That's cool, and it's featured on the homepage. They don't need to see a pop-up that's like, "Hello, Texas, how are you today?" And that's just noisy. And so we think that there's a lot of tools out there that can help grow an email list and can help sort of keep users on the page, but ultimately keeping the internet and your website elegant and non-disruptive is is a really powerful long-term strategy. And we've got a lot of data to back up that, when you personalize things in a meaningful way, keeps people on the site longer, keeps them engaged longer, your conversion rate, whatever that is, whether it's a form completion or e-commerce sale, improves. So we're hopeful that more people will do that, but we're not seeing that in practice. We're seeing a lot more noise.
Yeah, I mean,
we can fight the good fight.
Yeah, well, keep fighting the good fight. The most frustrating thing as a consumer, I mean, we remember like the early days of the internet when everything became banner ads, and it was just like and very quickly, I mean, those may have worked for a brief period of time, but very quickly, cognitively, we just started all ignoring them. Like you just don't see it. Can't even tell you what banner ad I saw because you just ignore it.
Right. It's an impression that you will not remember.
Yeah. I mean, at all. And back when they were just go with all the fluorescent colors and the bright this and flashing Christmas lights around the thing. At some point you just tune that stuff out.
Impressions versus clicks versus conversions, like making sure that you're tracking that third column.
Yes. And that's I mean, I see in trying to promote things like a podcast, which I have obviously firsthand experience trying to do, and just running small digital ads even, I can expose my content according to whatever, Facebook or Instagram, to thousands of people. But if they're not, in a sense, qualified leads, if they don't actually convert, if they don't click on my content, if they don't move into listening to the show, becoming followers, those kinds of things, it's useless. I don't care that people have seen it. I want to drive awareness with the right people. And if they're not converting, then we've got a problem. And an opportunity. But that's where we all are. I think that as things have evolved, people used to focus even on like YouTube statistics on views, and the number of views didn't actually equate to quality views in a sense. Like just because 8 million people watched it didn't mean they loved it, didn't mean they
how much did they watch. Yeah,
exactly. And so YouTube started to focus on watch time. And of course that's what they're going for. They want to keep you on platform as long as possible, and prioritizing watch time versus number of views and engagement was also important. Did they click the like button? Did they leave a comment? Did they do all those kinds of things? Just again, raising the quality of it and doing things that are elegant in perhaps anything we do is so key. Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say kind of on the other side of that is the thing that so many people just overlook? What are people missing when it comes to digital marketing, GeoFly, getting things right?
Yeah, seems to me in 2022, or if you're listening to this in 2023 or 24, I'm sure this will still apply, that the harder the sort of hill to climb in the marketing campaign, or the marketing, maybe not the marketing software, but the more input, the greater the output. I'll use an example of, I recently bought a book from a website that talks about real estate investing. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. The book was on Amazon, but it was also on the publisher's platform. And I decided, well, I'm going to buy it from the publisher's platform because when I do that, I get into this sort of little community of 4 other people who bought the book in my time zone. And they give you their emails and they connect you and they say, okay, it's up to you to sort of connect and have a book club or, some sort of mini mastermind kind of team. But I thought that was so interesting because it prevented me, one, from buying the book just from Amazon, and I would have saved, maybe $3. I could have found it used, but I didn't. I bought it new from the publisher, and it connected me, and there was this community. And so it's that classic, like David versus Goliath. We see it today. It worked 5 years ago. It'll work 10 years from now, which if you want to compete with Google and Amazon, or think about your vertical, So we're GeoFly. GeoFly personalizes content. Well, there's companies much larger than us that do the same thing. So what can we do from a marketing standpoint that the other companies simply cannot? We can come and hopefully provide some value to your listeners, Andrew, and we can take an hour out of our day and do that. The CEO of Google, might not be able to do that. Hopefully, you can land them as a guest, and that'd be great. But the takeaway there is that, the greater the input, I think the greater the reward. So for us, we're not trying to compete with the Googles or an Optimizely, which has an unlimited budget, huge venture funding.
Sure.
We can't compete with them in Google Ads. So how can we win on, different platforms?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the one of the things that gets me about all of that is, how do we offer something special? Like you say, that publisher goes, here's how we've differentiated our product, our offering. If you buy it from us, we connect you with other like-minded people. And the creation of community, especially in this kind of disconnected world of everybody sitting there staring at their screens, just having anything that brings people together, that's a huge value add. That's definitely worth $3, $5, even $10 more to be part of the team.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it worked. And what a cool concept. And it wasn't that difficult, on my side to add it, or I'm sure from their side to just say, hey, Mountain Time Zone, send these 3 people. That's your new group. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So real estate investing, let's turn this podcast from marketing into real estate investing.
Let's go. Yeah.
So that's, all joking aside, that's one of the biggest growth categories, is people looking to get involved in real estate. And of course, now we're seeing the market kind of go down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Or at least expected to decrease. And maybe that'll present some opportunities. But, what else are you into? I mean, aside from perhaps an interest in real estate investing, what's kind of the future for you, GeoFly, Pintler Group, things like that?
That's a great question. And that is definitely one of the benefits of bootstrapping is, when those profits come in, you can decide to deploy them in the business, or you can decide, I need to diversify a little bit, mm-hmm. maybe something a little more secure than a software startup out of Missoula. I'm going to get a quadplex and rent it out and live in a unit. And so we've, my wife and I have grown a nice real estate portfolio in Missoula, which has been really rewarding. We have some vacation rental, and then we actually live ourselves in one of our rentals, which is cool. And then beyond that, the next steps for GeoFly and for Pintler Group, we've got we've got a concept in the works right now. We're actually working with a development team to build it. That'll be our next project, which revolves around the buying and selling of businesses in that space.
Okay.
So that'll be something. Our goal for Q4 is to finish that and have that launched. And then on the GeoFly side, we've been really hitting the pavement with GeoFly. Like I said, 2022 has been a really great year for us. But we're launching at the end of this year a new version of GeoFly, which will make it easier for geo redirection, meaning somebody from Canada comes to your website, they don't see a Canadian version, they actually just get redirected to a different website altogether, like the Canadian URL of your business. So that's going to be much easier. You can do it right now in our current system, but in the next version, we'll make that simpler. And at Pintler Group, we are continuing we actually do some podcasting for Missoula businesses and Montana businesses. So we'll do podcast series. People hire us to come in and interview certain people in their company and turn it into a podcast. So that's been a fun service that we offer, and continues to be really popular with our clients.
Podcast in a box, man. That's a great idea for getting. Hey, I mean, I think that so many things you have to. I see. At least imagine that there's a little bit of a learning curve that you have to conquer with your clients to not only sell them on you really could use our services, but also here are the services we want to deploy for you, say podcast in a box, create a podcast, and why that is. Make that business case for why this is the right path to take and why we're the ones to take you there. Podcasting is really cool. I mean, obviously I'm a little bit of an evangelist for it because I'm doing it right now. But the fact is to get your message out there in a way that other people don't really have access to. I mean, that to have a share of your time and attention, which is all any of us are going for in this digital world, of which I'm a very teeny tiny part, is to have a share of your attention. And podcasts come in during a time that's oftentimes underutilized or underexplored. So if I can give you some content that you can listen to in the car when you otherwise would be engaged in something else, you can't be watching a video, you can't be reading anything. And you can walk the streets and listen to a podcast. It's very difficult to walk and read or walk and watch a YouTube video at the same time. It's generally frowned upon to do it while you're driving.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, man, great exploring that too. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. If you guys want to know more about Kyle, you can check out pintlergroup.com, geofly.com, and also follow him on LinkedIn. The links are in the show notes as always. Until next time, I'm Andrew Wallace, and we don't have a problem. We've got an opportunity.